Hey, what is up, everyone? This is Gary A. Swaby. I have returned. We are here with the Snowfall Aftermath because Snowfall Season 6 is here, the final season. And I am joined by, of course, Mr. Richard Bailey Jr. How are you doing, Richard?
Doing good, Gary. What's up, listeners and viewers?
What's up, indeed? I know the people have been asking for us. Yeah, we are finally here to recap the first two episodes. It was two episodes, so we needed a little bit more time. With the time difference and everything that we're working with, but we will try and get the rest of these recaps out a lot faster to you guys. But it's just because it was two episodes, there was a bit of a delay, and plus we're both busy people. We got lives and things going on, and then Richard's been working very hard on the BMF coverage also. So I hope you guys have been checking that out over on the entertainment channel. But yeah, we are here on the main channel with Snowfall Aftermath. That time of the year has come back around again. I remember last year, season five was very exciting. There was a lot to talk about, but man, this season six, they set it off crazy already. Like there's some things we got to talk about today. So we are going to recap two episodes, episode one and episode two of season six. So, just going to do it back to back right now. So we're going to get straight into it. We won't waste too much time. But I do want to remind the people that your engagement is very important for, the success of this show and all of our other coverage. We cover a lot of shows from BMF to Power, Snowfall, and we're trying to actually do more. So your engagement is very important. It helps us grow. It helps us to commit more time to actually do these reviews and recaps and discussions. So please do, leave your comments, let us know your thoughts. Whether you want to respond to something we said or talk about something that you liked from Snowfall, definitely leave your comments below. Please also hit the like button if you do enjoy listening to the content. And you can also hit the bell so that you get notified when we do, drop a new video and stuff like that. So please consider that. So let's get right into season six, episode one. The title of the episode is Fallout. And the way this works is both me and Rich, we're going to give our takeaways of the episode, which are things that really stood out to us from the episode that we kind of want to highlight and talk about. And then we'll have a little question at the end, or a little discussion before we get into the episode two recap. So let's begin with the takeaways first of all. And I guess because I am the host, I'll take the honors this time, and then Rich will go first next time. So takeaways for episode one. So I really liked how, first of all, how it kind of it carried on from where it left off. We got right into what happened last season. Obviously, Franklin he robbed the stash house. Jerome and Aunt Louise stash house, and there was a couple bodies that were dropped, and immediately we see the effects of that. And this is one of the things that we've said about this show is that they're willing to show both sides. They show you the drugs and the people selling them and getting rich, but they also show you the people who get hooked on the drugs and how it destroys their lives. So and in this case we see Franklin, he robbed the stash house. He dropped a couple bodies, last season, and we see the effects of that with the little girl. I believe her name was Tisha. Is it Tisha? So yeah, the little girl, she's trying to find her parents and everything, and then the cops discover the bodies and they set up the crime scene and everything like that, and everybody's looking, and the little girl, she kind of sneaks into the crime scene, and immediately, she sees that she recognizes that it is her parent, her father that was take his life was taken. And then, Jerome sees this also, which is very important for later on. But Jerome sees this, all take place. He kind of he brings the little girl to the attention of the police officers to let them know that there's a little girl on the crime scene. And yeah, this is what this show does. It shows you the cause and effect. It shows you what happens, after the fact. And we sometimes we have to appreciate that because these shows, they have a power, like it's powerful visualization, like seeing these images of people getting rich and successful. These are powerful image that could influence people, but the fact that it takes the time to show you the effects of what happens and the downside to these things, that is what is going to make you realize that not all of this is glamorous, what these people are doing. And as even if you look back at the seasons of Snowfall, you'll see the rise and the fall of these characters, taking place throughout the seasons. Because if you go back to some of the earlier seasons, it felt a bit more happy, a little bit more energetic, because you were seeing Franklin and his friends get rich and prosperous. Like, it had a different energy. But in these last few seasons, you're kind of starting to see the downslope and how their lives are being destroyed by this. So that was great to see. They set the tone immediately with that. And then there was a scene where Franklin was talking to Top Notch. Shouts to Rich for telling me these names, otherwise I would never remember. But but yeah, Franklin was talking to Top Notch, and he was asking for information. Now, one thing is, he wanted information on Peaches, where Peaches was, and I remember that being a subject of discussion last time. We did the Snowfall aftermath, because Peaches just kind of went missing, and there was a lot of questions surrounding that. What happened to him? Is he coming back? Is he alive? All that stuff. So, and they kind of glossed over it, at the end of last season without really, bringing it back up. So now we know that Franklin, he is looking for Peaches. He is trying to find out what happened with him. So that's cool to see that, they might finally answer that question of where Peaches went. And maybe he'll return at some point this season. And then in that same scene, Franklin also asked for information about Teddy's family. And that was an interesting little tidbit right there, because it shows you he is not playing at this point in time. He is ready to, like, the gloves are off, basically. He's ready to take it there with Teddy, because Teddy took everything from him. Um, so yeah, that was a cool scene. It kind of showed the mindset Franklin has of, you know, anything necessary to get, to get what he wants, to get his life back. Any like there's nothing he won't do. I believe he had a monologue where he said something like that in the last season. Like, there's nothing that he won't do. So we're seeing that, in that scene alone. And then another takeaway I had was, okay, so this is a critique of Franklin himself, not the show. But Franklin made a big mistake. Like, he got, I don't know if he was too arrogant or something, but he made a very bad mistake in this episode. So when he went to see D and set up the deal, to sell Jerome's product back to D, like back to the hood or whatever. Um, like, there was a part where he said, basically, take your time. You can even go tell Jerome. You can go to him and ask for a better price or whatever, because obviously Franklin heavily discounted the drugs, because it's all profit for him. He didn't have to buy those drugs, so it's going to be 100% profit no matter what, right? So, there was a moment where he said, you can go talk to Jerome, you can tell him, you can ask him for a better price. That was where he messed up, because if you're encouraging this guy to go and talk to Jerome, you should have it in the back of your mind that Jerome might set something up. Because he's going to know that you're trying to sell the drugs to D. So he's going to be prepared for that, and he's going to make some moves, to counteract what you're doing. So I don't know if he thought maybe, because Jerome's his uncle, he wouldn't retaliate or something. I don't know what he was thinking, but that was a big mistake that he made in that moment. And of course, we saw what happened. I believe her name is Beverly Black Diamond. She got beat up by Jerome. He could have basically killed her for all we know. Um, and yeah, that was all on Franklin. So I think he got a bit too arrogant, and he does make mistakes like this sometimes. Like there's these times where he's feeling himself a little too much, and then he does stupid things like that basically cost other people, to get hurt and stuff like that. So I felt like that was a big flaw on a big stain on his character in this episode. Even though he is kind of ruthless and he's willing to do anything, to get back what's his, I feel like he should still also have a bit more strategy to him, as well. He should be thinking a little deeper, especially because he knows his uncle. He knows Jerome. He knows, the kind of things that Jerome is capable of doing, and he knows how his mind works. He knows his strategies and, things like that. So he should have been expecting something to happen when that drug deal took place. Like he should have known it wasn't going to go smooth. So yeah, that's what I'll say about Franklin. But those are my main takeaways for this episode. It was a fantastic episode. I feel like it was a great way to set the season off. And it didn't feel like it was rushed or anything to try and get into the action. They just took their time to kind of transition into what we're going to see in this season. So I very much appreciated the episode. But very interested to hear Richard Bailey's takeaways now. So take it away when you're ready.
So let me start off by saying excellent takeaways as always, Gary. I thought this was a phenomenal episode. And let me just say this before I get to the takeaway. Everything you said about how this show depicts the cause and effect, that is 100% why I think this show is, I think, in a class of its own. The way that they shoot the show, the cinematography, and then of course the music. Because as I was watching this episode, when they start off with Walk On by Isaac Hayes, and the last time I heard that song was in Dead Presidents. So excellent soundtrack. We got to give them credit for that, because they started the episode with that song and they ended the episode with that song. So stuff like that is why I say they really look at this more of like they take an artistic approach to telling the story. And then the other thing is that in this episode, it really was about tension, seeing how Franklin and Jerome were going to react. And again, they took their time. They didn't rush to the conflict. Obviously, there was a conflict, but they didn't rush to the back and forth. They took their time to get to that point. And again, when we talk about episode 2, we'll get more into that. But yeah, I just think, again, the way that the show is made, they take the care and attention to detail to try and make it, I want to say, as put together and well done as possible. So we have to give them props on that. I know a lot of people have made comparisons about this show, BMF, Power. In my personal opinion, this show is on its own. It's in its own category, in my opinion. But we'll talk about that more in the future, I'm sure. But let me just talk about my takeaways from this episode. Uh, my biggest takeaway is about Franklin. But before I get to Franklin, let me just talk about a few things that I didn't want to mention in this episode. We did see Teddy is still looking for Parissa, because the last time we saw Parissa, she disappeared. And of course, Teddy is freaking out. He doesn't know what happened to her. He thinks that whoever got to her is the same person that got to Avi. And we did see in this episode he confronted some of these other guys that used to work with Avi to let them know, and they didn't really care what was going on. They told him to get, they were very bold and to the point. Told him to get out of here. We don't want nothing to do with you, so on and so forth. So because he is paranoid about that, he doesn't notice that there are certain things happening with Gustavo in the background. Because Gustavo, as we saw at the end of last season, he was also finally caught up by, I believe, the officer or the agent, the DEA agent is Tony Morano. This guy finally caught up to Gustavo. And obviously, now Gustavo was working as an informant. And basically, his job is to get all the information that they need to take down Teddy. So he does tell Teddy in this episode, because when Teddy is looking for him, trying to find him, he can't find him. He's worried. He tells him, oh yeah, I had to take my kid to the ER. So that explains why I was absent. And of course, Teddy keeps asking him, oh, which hospital, so on and so forth. So obviously, Gustavo is a little paranoid now because he's worried that Teddy knows how Teddy obsesses over everything. And eventually he's going to find out that he's basically working, against him. So I look forward to seeing how that storyline progresses because it's only going to get more intense from here on out. But I did want to mention those two characters because I kind of feel like this episode really was about Franklin and Jerome for the most part. You saw the other storylines progress, but you saw obviously more happen with Teddy's character in episode 2 and Gustavo, so on and so forth. So my main takeaway though from this episode, it really is about the bold moves that Franklin made in this episode. Now, we did find out at the very beginning that he has a new stash house that he brought Veronique to. And we do find out that he was successful in taking 3.4 million in both cash and product from Louis and Jerome. Now, just to recap for those in case they missed it, last season, Teddy stole 73 million from Franklin. This was the whole reason as to why. And of course, he went to Louis to ask her for help. She didn't want to help him. So, of course, that was when this whole relationship got really messy. So he decided to take matters into his own hand and steal that money and product. Now, we do see that he is asking Veronique in this episode to help him by moving some of this money into Miami, any type of bank in Miami, because again, it's dirty money. So she is very hesitant to do that for the entirety of the episode, but then halfway through, she finally does decide to help him, and she does realize that she's going to have to reach out to her mom and get further assistance. So that gives you a sign of what's to come. I know we said last season we didn't really trust the character, and we definitely don't trust the mom. And I think we're going to be talking about that again in the weeks to come because it just feels that way. Something is going to happen with that relationship, as well with the mother involved now also. But to go to what you said, Gary, yes, we also see that Franklin does decide to try to talk to his guy to try to see if he can find Peaches, and of course to try to find Teddy's father, his ex-wife, and his kid. Now, what they did say, which I thought was very interesting, the father is in Kansas City, the ex-wife and kid they're in D.C. So I don't really know if they. I mean, I think there's a high possibility you probably will see the ex-wife and the kid show up again. I don't really know what Franklin's intentions are as far as harming them in particularly, but he also says find out anybody that has any connection to Teddy. Basically, because he wants to really get at Teddy, and anything he sees as weakness, he's going to go after in Teddy. So this brings into the whole idea of Parissa, okay? Because we know that Parissa is with Teddy, and as we will talk about in episode 2, there is a record of him bailing her out of prison. So if I'm pretty sure that this guy that works for Franklin, he is going to be able to find out about Parissa, and I'll be very curious to know how Franklin is going to try and deal with her as a means of threatening and getting to Teddy. So stay tuned for that because it feels like it's headed in that direction. And then again, the last point I will mention about this whole thing with Franklin in this episode You do see that Jerome pages him multiple times in the episode. He takes his time to respond to him. And then, of course, he's still saying, "Hey, sorry it had to be this way, but listen, I'm not backing down from what I'm doing." And then, as you alluded to, Gary, as you already said earlier, what ends up happening later in the episode is that Jerome shows up with Buckley, the crooked cop, and his little friends to basically stop. This is after Black Diamond and Dallas they've already gotten some of what they needed to get from Dion, and they did the deal. They get stopped, they get pulled over. Jerome then decides to put his hands on Black Diamond and fractures her skull. Now, I want to say this. They're going to give a very special shout out to Christine Horn. This is the exact same actress that plays Mabel in BMF. And I know that Dana actually interviewed her about BMF. So, I mean, listen, she's got some very good roles. I think she did a very good job as a character. But man, that I was not expecting that, the whole pistol whipping and then him taking that approach. Obviously, we've seen Jerome kill Khadijah in the past, and I kind of feel like this is the boiling point building up to what he is willing to do to get his money back. Because again, both him and Franklin, they are very prideful. If they feel that they have been taken advantage of, they're going to seek revenge. So that's why I said I look forward to seeing what happens next. But an excellent, phenomenal way to start the season. And again, I don't understand why so many people are sleeping on this show, but I hope they are going to catch on to the show before it's over because it is a really well done show. And I think that John Singleton would be very proud of what they are doing just because he's no longer here. So, but excellent, excellent season premiere for sure.
Oh yeah, 100% agree. And although it might not be going exactly how John Singleton planned, I do think he would be proud of how they've been handling the season these past couple seasons. So yeah, they're doing a great job with that, and also some excellent takeaways from yourself as well. Um, yeah, like that the whole Parissa thing, I didn't even think of that, but you're absolutely right because now there's a paper trail, and now they can find out that she is someone obviously that he cares about. So that's pretty interesting. And also another thing I wanted to say as well, because people might not catch why my name is inconsequential G. Another thing I wanted to bring up is, I really liked Sissy's monologue in this episode when she was trying to convince Franklin that he should meet with Ruben. And she was basically talking about how Teddy, he did whatever he did to Franklin's father, and then he left her alive because she's just an inconsequential N word, basically, and that is why she feels like he needs to go because if he'll treat people like that and just not care, about people and stuff. So yeah, that's part of the reason why she's so keen to take down Teddy and why she wants Franklin to meet Ruben. So that was an excellent monologue. But go ahead.
That's a very clever name, excellent choice. I just want to make a comment and say I don't know if I'm the only one that thinks this. That had to be the standout performance of this episode. That entire speech that she gave, that was a very spirited speech. She said no lies in that whatsoever. So we have to give our roses to the actress. You did say she was also in The Wire as well. So um,
Yeah,
yeah, she did a fantastic job.
and she's Jamaican, so shout out to
Oh
her.
yes, yes.
But yeah, so let's get into some questions and then we'll hop over to the second episode. So a lot of what I would ask is already covered in the next episode anyway. So I'm just gonna there's only gonna be one question here, but yeah. So I remember last year, 2022, and I remember one of the big questions in season 5 was, can we trust Veronique? And in this episode, now it obviously Franklin trusts her is his soon to be baby mother. And in this episode that we see she kind of has an attitude because of how Franklin is acting. He's putting their lives in danger, and I guess she's feeling a bit uncomfortable with the situation because she is at a vulnerable point in her life where she is pregnant and carrying his child. Um, but he also calls on her for help, with trying to locate the money and all that stuff, and she doesn't appreciate that he's kind of asking her for help. And I'm sure, like you said, we're gonna see more. We're gonna see this lead to possibly her past and her mother, the relationship she has with her mother. But the question I have is, because she showed, like, when she was going to go to Miami and make that link and everything, we saw she walked to the private jet or wherever it was, like she had on like that fancy attire, like, and she became a new character. So she's showing that she's able to put on a performance and everything like that, right? So so like she's able to become somebody else, to get the job done. So in order to launder the money. So the question I have is, can we trust her? I mean, in the present time, maybe we can. Maybe her motivations are in line with Franklin currently, but do you think that she is still possibly one of Franklin's big weak points and could lead to his downfall this season? Like, so what do you think about that, Rich?
All right, that's a great question, Gary. My answer is that we can trust Veronique to look out for Veronique. I kind of feel like, obviously we did see the season trailer. We did see the hinting that there's going to be continual issues between, as far as her trusting Franklin, and her mom is telling her one thing, Franklin is telling her another thing. So I kind of feel like, personally, Veronique's mindset now is doing what's best for herself and her child. So I think if it push comes to shove, she will leave Franklin behind. The only question I have is, will she be a casualty of all of this stuff that's happening? Because we know that there are going to definitely be some casualties. And one other quick point that I do want to mention, because you did bring this up in your takeaway, Peaches, right? I am so glad that they are finally going to address that situation, because that was a major complaint people had last season. But one thing we know about Peaches is that he is very tight with both Jerome and Franklin. So, as you mentioned earlier before we started recording, this guy is walking into a war with these two. And that means he definitely could be a casualty one way or another. So I look forward to seeing how they handle that. But to go back to this main question you asked, I don't think that we should look at Veronique as someone that we should trust 100%. Because again, I think she's going to do what's best for herself and the child. If she sees that Franklin, because again, as she said in this same episode, she told Franklin that she didn't sign up for this. Franklin is supposed to be out the game, but he is in it now because he's trying to get his $73 million back. And I have to say, I understand, because that's a hell of a lot of money to lose. So I understand why he wants to. He cannot start back at zero, like he said. It ain't going to happen. He's right. It ain't going to happen. So I understand that. But again, he's going to be willing to do whatever he has to do to get that money back. On the same side of that, her mother Cassandra, that is somebody we need to be concerned about. So I guess we have to see how their relationship goes. We know that her mother Cassandra did her wrong in the past as well. So that's why I feel she's going to do what's best for herself and her child at the end of the day. And so I wouldn't trust her to stay in Franklin's corner throughout the entirety of all of this. She may be loyal for the moment, but I kind of feel like when push comes to shove, she's going to make sure that she is taken care of in that child, not worried about Franklin at all. But we'll see what happens.
Oh yeah, for sure. And yeah, I agree. She's gonna look out for her. And if it comes down to Franklin, if it's a case of choosing to be loyal to this person who keeps getting them into more and more danger, or perhaps taking the money and getting away with her child, and raising the child herself, I think she would choose that latter option. Is the safer bet, to get away from Franklin. So we'll really have to see how it plays out and um how vulnerable she's going to be, how much in danger she's going to be from this war this season, and because there could be some close calls, and who knows, maybe she'll end up losing the child if it gets too real. So yeah, there's a lot of risk there with staying loyal to Franklin. So I definitely feel like we need to watch her closely. But also, we might have a little bit more to say about her after the next episode that we talk about. So um, we'll go ahead. Unless, is there anything else that you kind of wanted to highlight from episode one before we move on to episode two?
Oh no, I think we covered pretty much all the important details. So yeah, we can move on to episode two.
All right. So yeah, so let's get there. So the next episode was Snowfall, season 6, episode 2, and the title of the episode is The Sit Down. So let's get right into the takeaway segment and kind of break down, our thoughts on, what happened in this episode. And this was a very interesting one. There was a lot of great acting, a lot of, tense scenes and situations in this one. So I'm going to let Richard Bailey Jr. go first with the takeaways this time. So take it away, Richard.
Okay, sounds good. So if Sissy had the breakout performance of episode one, then I say without a doubt, hands down, uh, both Franklin and Jerome and their final conversation in this episode, that was without a doubt one of the most breakout, memorable moments of this entire episode. Because once again, you had the, all of this tension was building throughout the entire episode. After we learned the fate of Black Diamond, you saw the fallout of that. You saw that Dallas left Franklin. He was going to give her time off, and she said no. She had made a pact with Black Diamond that if something happened to one of them, then the other one would go away and get out. So she's gone. So he's lost some people as a result of that. Um, so, and obviously his mom is telling him the entire time that he does eventually meet up with Ruben at the museum, and he starts to reveal information with Ruben as far as when he first met Teddy. He's starting to give him all the information to take down Teddy, but he does tell Ruben that he wants Teddy alive. Now, obviously, we need to see how that plays out because Ruben did kill he did kill Avi last season. I don't know if he wants the exact same thing as Franklin. And I one thing I do want to mention, because we did talk about this as well last season, I still think that Ruben would, at the end of the day, take down Franklin also. Obviously, he's going to use Franklin right now to get whatever he can as far as taking out Teddy. But don't for one second think that you can trust this guy and that he won't try to take down you also. So I look forward to seeing where that goes. But to go back to what I'm talking about, as far as the excellent acting between both, I believe it's Amin Joseph and Damson Idris at the end of this episode, it's a masterclass because again, the conversation started with Jerome talking about how he came into LA when he started out, and then how he was taking care of Sissy. He finally moved her down to take care of her, and then seeing her have a son, it gave him a sense of purpose. He said it was the best day of his life to know that he has purpose, that he has a responsibility to make sure that he helps to raise this kid right. And then it turns into, yes, I let you down, and look what you have become. And then that back and forth, the squabble, the slapping, I thought that was fantastic. And again, you have, of course, after Jerome slaps him twice, he gets up, pulls out a gun, and he threatens to shoot him. When he doesn't do it, then he screams like a petulant child, the same child that Jerome helped raise, and then he leaves and storms out. And again, when Jerome gets up and looks back, it's again that same little girl, Tisha, that we saw in the first episode, who is a witness to what has just happened. And then, of course, they have the scene of, Damson, aka Franklin, walking out, almost getting hit by that car at the light, continuing to walk, go to his car. Of course, he's angry. He reacts to that, and then again, but once again, the music in this scene, again, that song, Slipping into Darkness. And the funny thing is, a song created by a band called War. So you see, listen, they are very creative when they think about how to use the music, how to import it, how to put it into the scene. It's just a very well done because they consider all of this when putting it together. So again, I thought that again, it was very well as far as how they handled the tension because it wasn't something where they rushed to them having that sit down. That was at the very end of the episode, and it's designed that way because now you want to know what happens next, but you won't find that out until next week. You know, so that was fantastic. As for other takeaways of this episode, again, Teddy does get Parissa out of prison, and then he asks her if she saw the guy that was after him, and of course, she's able to help get a sketch of this guy. He gives that sketch to Gustavo to see if Gustavo can help him. And then Gustavo goes home and realizes, wait a second, when he sees that photo on the refrigerator, this guy was at Louis and Jerome's wedding. So again, he reaches out to Franklin and they have that. And again, I like how, once again, they're paying homage to the character because we know that Uso's background was as a wrestler. So him meeting up with Franklin at that wrestling ring 100% makes sense because again, if you watch the show from the very beginning, you know about their history. You know that Franklin was into watching these matches. That's where they decide that to have that conversation. And then Franklin tells him, "Oh yeah, you need to get me Teddy, and then I will give you 10 million. I'll give you whatever you want, but I want Teddy." So as you said earlier, Gary, Franklin is very determined to get Teddy. I just am very curious to see how this all comes together because it's definitely going to be some major stuff that goes down, but we'll see what happens. But overall, those are the main takeaways. The one final thing I will mention is we finally do get to learn more about Cassandra, which is Veronique's mom. She does meet up with Franklin in this episode. And again, already made a ridiculous claim about saying she wants 20%. And of course, you see Franklin's like, yeah, right. We'll start. They decide to start around at 10 to see what info she can find, because again, she knows about how to move money because she's done this illegally. Of course, she didn't like the fact that the government is involved, and that's something that she does tell Veronique is that part of their rules was to never do anything having to do with the government or mercenaries. So now she basically is being brought into this because of her daughter, and again, they don't have the best relationship. That's why I said I'll be very curious to see what happens, but I do not. I definitely don't trust the mother, obviously. And you saw how her eyes lit up when Franklin said, "Oh yeah, $73 million." That is. That's why I say this is a this is an issue here. So I hope Franklin is prepared. I think we're going to see a lot of excellent acting from Damson this entire season. A lot of scenes with him getting angry, and having a fit because of certain things that happen. Because a lot of stuff is not going to go the way he thinks it's going to go. But again, a fantastic episode, much like the first episode, and again continues to build the tension and leaves you wondering, looking forward to seeing what happens next. So, job well done.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and excellent takeaways right there. I definitely mirror a lot of what you said, and some of my takeaways actually are kind of in line with yours, and I can't wait to see what you think about some of these questions that I have later on as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, but yeah, great takeaways, great observations as always. So let me go ahead and give my takeaways. So, of course, you brought up Cassandra just now, and yeah, she was a very standout character in this episode. I mean, of course, we know who stole the show. It was Jerome and Franklin, but the addition of Cassandra was a very notable point in this episode. And I just like how they kind of set up her character, and there was a lot of subliminal things that they kind of let on about her. Like, so, when Veronique met her at she was playing cards or whatever, and she was talking about she basically broke down her situation, with Franklin and everything, and then Cassandra basically said to her like, what have I told you about, getting into it with the government and stuff like that? And Veronique was like, well, you didn't take your own advice, I'm learning from you. So, just that little line there alludes to the fact that she's had some government type situations in the past. She's had some encounters like this. So it shows that this character has a lot of experience, that we don't know about yet. But it just kind of it boosts up her character. So then by the time she meets with Franklin, and you see how comfortable she is talking to Franklin. Like she doesn't miss a beat. She looks very confident, and she confident enough to ask for what was it, 70%? How much did she ask for? 20%, sorry. Yeah,
Yeah,
she asked for
20%. Yep.
20%
Mhm.
of the 75 million, so yeah, like she's confident enough to ask for that. So and then the way she talks about, what she could do and everything, she kind of puts Franklin into, her mindset of figuring out what happened to the money. Like, okay, so he must have had somebody helping him, because there's no way he could have, got this much money moved without, and the government probably wouldn't have signed off on this. So he did it dirty, basically. So just the way she calculates all of that, it just adds to that experience that, that they kind of hyped up already about her. She has all this experience, and that kind of sells it. Just the fact that she's making all these calculations in her mind of how Teddy stole the money. And then, she's like, okay, give me a week. And if I figure out what's going on, then you can just give me 10%, and guarantee that I'll play a part in the child's life and everything like that. So yeah, I just love how her character came off. She's very mysterious, and they let off a few little details about her, but it's very subliminal, and you have to pick up on it. And she just has this confidence about her, like she really knows what she's doing, So, and then that kind of also plays into not trusting Veronique all the way, because if that's her mother, like I feel like she's definitely a danger to Franklin now, because I mean, her mother could help her get away from Franklin easy, or she could find out what happened with the money. She could find a way to get it back, and they both run off with the money, So it could go so many ways now. But that was a very interesting character to introduce. And then with Franklin meeting Ruben. I mean, this is technically the second time they've been around each other, because, of course, Ruben was at the wedding, but they didn't really have any communication, back then. But that whole scene at the museum was it was a pretty cool payoff. That wow, these two characters are finally meeting. Now, I will also say that Franklin, he kind of has this blind arrogance about him sometimes. So in his mind, he's getting back at Teddy. In his mind, this is his way of getting back at Teddy, right? But like you said, Rich, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Ruben would also sell out Franklin, to get to Teddy. And I'm wondering if Franklin is aware of this in his mind. Like he has to be thinking that there's a possibility this guy could throw me under the bus too, because obviously I have to admit my part in what Teddy's done. So if he has all this information documented, he could easily take me down too. So if Franklin isn't thinking like that, then he's very blindly arrogant, and it's just like what he did in the first episode, where he told Dee, go ahead and talk to Jerome, and then he didn't expect that Jerome was gonna do something when the drug deal took place. Like that blind arrogance, and that right there is going to be dangerous for him. It's going to be his downfall. So he has a lot of moments like that where he's very arrogant, and and it kind of plays into what happens at the cafe later on as well with Jerome. But yeah, that was a very interesting meetup to see those characters kind of meeting because now there is a plot against Teddy, and Franklin kind of has he kind of has a power now. He has the power to actually take down Teddy by working with Ruben, because we know Ruben, he's connected and he could take down Teddy. You know, he has what it takes. He has the connections. He has, you know, access to guns and whatever he needs. Basically, all the resources that he needs. So now that Franklin is kind of working with Ruben, now he can kind of play ball a bit more with Teddy. So that's interesting. Um, and one little thing I'll note before I get to the final scene is we saw Kane, you know, in hospital, and he's putting a lot of pressure on Franklin to kind of deal with Buckley and you know, his uncle and Auntie Louie and stuff. So this is basically another pressure point in Franklin's life now. Like Kane is a whole nother pressure point that he has to deal with, because you know, if he doesn't give if he doesn't give in to what Kane wants him to do, then that's going to be a bigger problem for him later on too. Because Kane he has connections in the streets, and he can make things difficult for Franklin to move around. So yeah, that's just another thing that he might have to actually deal with at some point. And the longer that he stalls, is the worse it's going to get with Kane. But did you want to say something on that? Did
I
you
just
want to
want to
say
make a quick
something?
comment. I
Yeah,
just gonna make a quick comment and say, you know, Kane is a big deal when Scully mentions him also,
yeah,
saying that they because when he warned Louis and Jerome that they need to fix this stuff with Franklin. Um, and of course, also interesting that now Franklin and Louis believe that I mean to say Jerome and Louis believe that Franklin is working with Kane. So you see how this is going to definitely get a lot worse before it gets better. Because if they believe that they are working together, then they're probably going to try to hire some people to try to take out both of them. I mean, that's very possible. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, a lot of drama.
yeah, definitely. And it was good to see Scully as well, even though it seems like Scully's getting stranger each episode. But
Yes,
but
you're
yeah,
right.
it could even end up as a showdown between because maybe, you know, maybe Jerome and on Louis will utilize Scully, and Franklin will utilize Kane, and maybe those two characters will face off or something. You know, who knows what could
See,
happen.
that'll be interesting. We know that, as you said, Scully is in a different. He feels like he's in a different frame of mind right now. Not really
Right.
as violent. You know, we do know that he lost his daughter as well as his girl. So I kind of thought in the back of his mind, I kind of thought to myself, maybe in the back of his mind, it's always a possibility that later down the road he could decide to get the payback that he never gotten. But I don't think that I don't know if that's going to still happen. I guess it depends what happens moving forward in the remaining episodes, but we'll see what happens. But he's definitely going to get pulled into this. I would assume that, like you said, now because it's open season apparently on all of these characters.
Yeah, yeah, it's all out war now, and these are all chess pieces at this point. So it's going to be interesting to see how the pieces move around the board. But yeah, so final takeaway, of course, you know, it has to be the cafe scene, you know, at the end with Jerome and Franklin. Like that was an incredible scene. I mean, first of all, the sit down with Jerome and Sissy, you know, that was great too, because it put a lot of things in perspective. Because although Jerome and Franklin are mad at each other, you know, Jerome sitting down with Sissy just shows how, you know, why all of this, you know, why they're still family basically. Like she is the root of all this. She has a connection to both of them, you know, with Jerome being her brother and Franklin being her son. And of course, she has a bias for her son, but you know, there's still blood. They're all family at the end of the day. And you know, it just that moment of the siblings sitting down together just put into perspective, you know, that this bloody war that they're about to get into, like this is all, you know, it's all blood, it's all family. So and then you got the cafe scene later on. You already kind of broke it down in great detail, but just the level of acting between these two was incredible. And the way that Jerome, he basically told that story of, Franklin being young and basically being the reason that he was in LA in the first place, to be around Sissy and help raise him and things like that. And then, just telling that story of like practically raising Franklin, and then only for him to be sat across from him at that table at opposite sides of this war that's been brewing between them. And then it gets very heated, very emotional. Jerome lashes out, he strikes Franklin twice, and Franklin, he we know he's a very angry individual. He needs to check into your anger management,
Yeah.
your anger
Yes.
management business and everything. So, and then yeah, he kind of snaps. He raises his gun. He doesn't care about all the people around him clearly, but he raises the gun, but he can't pull it because he can't pull the trigger because he knows that this is his family. This is his blood sat across him, and it just kind of hits him in that moment. And then he cries, and then he walks out, and then like you said, we see Tisha sitting there. And ironically, Franklin is the one responsible for her losing her father. So and like we discussed, all of these things are so well thought out with the writing. Like they put a lot of detail into the writing to set up these scenes in this way to paint a vivid picture, and to kind of get real artistic with it. And these scenes, they tell you a lot more than what you catch in the dialogue itself. So this is one of the things that's great about this show, and why we cover it. But yeah, that was a monumental scene. And Richard reminded me as well that that's kind of our stomping ground where they was at. That part of LA, downtown LA. We've actually been right at that spot. And when Rich said that, I went back and I looked and I was like, oh yeah, I recognize all those buildings. And one of my favorite American breakfast places is Denny's, and they got a Denny's close by there. So yeah, that was great to know that it was somewhere I've actually been too. But yeah, amazing episode. This just gets me even more hyped. Like I was ready to click on to the next episode, and there was no next episode, of course. So I was kind of sad after that because they did such a great job of just like setting up this whole story. So I really can't wait to see what happens next. But it is what it is. We gotta wait week to week. So we're gonna get into some discussions now about this episode and kind of break it down on a deeper level. But I do want to remind the people, if you are enjoying this discussion, please do hit the like button, drop your comments below, and you can also subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. We do have an entertainment channel also where currently Richard and Dana have been reviewing BMF. So make sure you go and check out that content also. That is on the entertainment channel, which we will link to that below. But yeah, so let's get into some questions. So Gustavo, right? Let's start with Gustavo, aka Oso. Um, so he is in an interesting position because he's a character that's connected to Teddy and Franklin, at the moment. And he is in a position where he has to double cross someone. There's no way around it. Somebody has to get double crossed by Gustavo. Um, and one thing I wanted to mention as well about when uh, when Franklin when they went to the wrestling match and he showed Franklin the sketch because he recognized Gustavo. I mean, not Gustavo, Ruben from the wedding and everything. And
Yeah.
Franklin, he wasn't being all the way honest. He didn't tell him that he's in contact with Ruben, That's another part where Franklin was kind of being blindly arrogant, because if Oso was to happen to find out that he was talking to Ruben and stuff, that could be dangerous for him, because then he could that could be the moment where he chooses to double cross Franklin. So there's a lot of ways they could take that there, but you know basically he has to double cross someone. So I want to ask you, Rich, what do you think his pathway is going to be in this story and how it unfolds, and who is he like really loyal to? Because a lot of times it feels like he's on Teddy's side, but then he also kind of has this special bond with Franklin, and they've been in some real life or death situations together. So what do you think about his position in this story?
That is a great question. That's a very good question. Yeah, like we saw last season, the controversial tiger episode that some people were very angry about. They were very like, "Oh, this is very random." Yeah, I kind of feel like, and then as you mentioned, that Franklin did go back and save Gustavo. He did go back and get him. So I kind of feel like this is tough. Well, this is what I will say. Based upon what we said about the storytelling and how they take their time to slowly unravel everything, I think we're not going to get a definitive answer to this anytime soon. This will probably come towards the very end, maybe the middle part, or shortly after the mid-season finale. Uh, but I feel like they're going to take their time to really get to that answer. But to answer the question, I kind of feel like he probably would side with Franklin and double cross Teddy, but only if he feels as though his family is being threatened. Now, we did see in the previous episode, Teddy did ask him which hospital was his kid at, and he told him. And we also know that he was mad because, we know that Gustavo asked Tony that he said, "Oh, I need you to get some paperwork from the hospital to confirm that's where my son was at." And of course, he was very angry in this episode when he asked him because Tony didn't do it. He had someone else on his team get that information. But because Tony maybe suggested to him that he was going to handle it personally and he didn't, that made him even more paranoid and went over the edge. So I kind of feel like push comes to shove. If he thinks that his family is in trouble and Teddy is the reason for that, I kind of feel like he will side with Franklin again. But I will say it will be interesting if he went in another direction completely and decided to go against Franklin. But I think it really all depends on what happens with his family, as far as if something happens to any of his kids or even his girlfriend. If something happens to them, and it's because of what's happening with Franklin and this entire war, or it's because of Teddy, then I feel like whoever isn't the one that's responsible, he will side with them and try to get revenge against the other one. But it's hard to determine right now. But I kind of feel like he would side with Franklin, but he's going to definitely have to be careful either way now with both Franklin and Teddy, because they are the ones that have conflict with each other, and he is right in the middle of all of that. So um, we have to wait and see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, he's in a tough spot because basically everyone is kind of using him. Even Franklin is like he's using him to try and get at Teddy now. And then yeah. So, and like you said, I think the most important thing to Gustavo is his family. So whatever is going to be the most threat to that is that's going to be the basis of his decision making probably. And maybe it will even get to a point where things get a bit too close for comfort, and he just tries to run away and disappear or something like that. But I think if he takes that route, the character may end up getting killed, or something. But yeah, I'm very interested to see how things play out there, because there's so much going on, with the characters at the moment, that it could kind of anything could happen. But I just find his situation in particular to be an interesting one, because he's right in the middle of everything that's happening. And yeah, so that'll be
And,
interesting to see. Go ahead.
and the other thing I was going to mention is he was the one that warned Teddy when Teddy decided to do business with Louis. He thought that was really messed up how he's basically trying to turn the family against each other. It's kind of
Mm,
funny, he had that line, Teddy had that line in the first episode, why doesn't this family just have enough sense to just tear each other apart? Which is the same thing that Sissy says in the second episode when she's talking with Franklin in the car. Is like, this is what they want. They want us to tear each other apart. So I kind of feel like Gustavo sees this. He knows what Teddy's true intentions are. It's just a matter of, is he going to be willing to turn on Teddy? Because we haven't seen that yet. But I kind of feel like that will be a very major moment if we do see that. So I hope that we do get a chance to see that.
mm, yeah, and that's interesting because yeah, like family is always stronger when they stick together. So all it would take would be for Franklin and Jerome and Louis to fix things and kind of maybe go against Teddy and everything, and then they could put themselves in a much better spot. Even though the I think by now the law is very much in tune with what they're doing, so like they're still they're still going to be vulnerable to like being locked up regardless, but um it would definitely be more beneficial for them if they teamed up. So maybe Gustavo could kind of be, he could be like a catalyst for trying to get them to see eye to eye again, as well as Sissy, because we know Sissy is going to be the main catalyst probably just because of her, role in the family. But yeah, he could. Gustavo could also be the one to kind of talk some sense into them, especially if he sees more of what Teddy is up to. So that's a good point. Um, but yeah, so it's very up in the air, very open in terms of Gustavo and his position. I definitely want to see more comments on that. From you people, let us know what you think his about his position. Um, so another thing I wanted to talk about was Kane, and I know we kind of touched on it already, but so Kane's position is basically, I want you to get back, you know, to get back at the people who did this to me, which we know is Buckley and obviously Uncle Jerome and Louis, right? And Franklin's whole case, his whole thing was, oh, we need to figure out where they are and get at them and all that stuff. But he knows where they are. He knows what's going on, like, because it's his family, and he actually saw Jerome in this episode. So he's kind of stalling because he wants to get what he wants. He wants to get his money. He wants to get at Teddy. So Franklin is clearly stalling and not taking Kane as seriously, and that is going to be a problem later. So the longer that he leaves that. So I guess my question is do you think, I know we talked about the possibility of maybe Franklin utilizing Kane and Jerome and Louis utilizing Scully, because they have like their own gangs and factions and stuff. So I know we talked about that as a possibility, and that definitely could happen. But also, do you feel like there might be a case where Kane turns on Franklin and maybe even tries to harm him in some way, or maybe Franklin tries to get rid of Kane, because he's being a thorn in his side? So, do you think these two could possibly turn on each other? And also, if you have any other thoughts on Kane at all.
Uh, so let me start off by saying, yeah, once again, that's a very, very good question. I know in the season trailer, we did see a shot where Franklin was involved in a shootout, and it looked as though Kane was in that same room that he was in. So, what I think is going to happen is, because again, what we did learn in this episode is that Louis and Jerome, they feel that Franklin is working with Kane, because when they find out, well, how did Kane find out about that we were the ones that did the hit on him? And then that's when Louis says, "Yeah," and Franklin knew about this too. So that's why they say, because they thought it was Leon. And by the way, We didn't mention Leon because Leon was not in these two episodes, but it looks like Leon is going to be returning, so we'll see where that goes. But to answer the question about Kane, I kind of feel like once this war gets started, and I think that's what we saw at the end of this episode is that there is the official confirmation we are now at war with each other. I kind of feel like Franklin is going to have to choose a side, and I feel like he will side with Kane. However, if Kane is successful, Kane or any of his people are successful in actually killing Jerome, then I could see Franklin turning the gun and killing Kane because I don't think he wants Jerome to die because I feel like if he wanted him dead, he would have killed him in this episode when he had the opportunity to do it. But again, he didn't want to take it there. All he does is he wants his money. He don't want no issues between them. But again, Jerome wants his money back. So again, it's an issue between those two. So I kind of feel like he doesn't necessarily want Jerome to get killed, but if Jerome is killed by Kane, then he may want to take out Kane. And the other part of that is you asked the question of would Kane turn on Franklin? Absolutely, yes, he definitely can do that. I kind of feel like at the moment he's focused on he needs to get revenge on what has happened to him. So he's going to definitely go after Jerome and Louis for sure, 100%. But I would not rule out the fact that if he is successful in getting to Jerome, then he would also want to go after just take out Franklin. But we have to wait and see how it plays out because again, the fact that Louis and Jerome know and feel that Franklin is working with Kane, that already gives you an idea of well, we need to be prepared to take both of them out by any means necessary. So I want to see exactly how they progress that storyline. But I kind of feel like it can go in either direction. But again, I would not trust anybody. If I was Franklin, I would not trust anybody. So got to be careful.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You can't trust anyone at this point in time. And one thing I was thinking is like, obviously, like you said, Franklin probably doesn't really want to kill Jerome and Louis because that is family and he has a connection to them. But one thing he could do is get at Buckley, and there could be a situation possibly, this is just a hypothetical thing that maybe he goes to Kane and Kane's people and lets them know, oh, Kane is going to be at this spot, later today and we can get at him. And maybe Franklin, goes on a mission with some of Kane's people or, with the crew or whatever, the gang members, and they try to get back at Scully, I mean not Scully, Buckley, and maybe it goes wrong, and maybe some of Kane's people end up dead in that situation, and then that might put more tension between Kane and Franklin. The fact that Buckley still got away, and Kane lost some of his people in the process, or something like that. So uh, yeah, could be a situation like that too. But yeah, we'll see how that plays out. So let's definitely acknowledge the fact that there is a trailer for episode 3. We saw the trailer, and like you mentioned, Leon is back. So I mean, what so Leon's stance at the end of season 5 was pretty much, he's kind of done. He's kind of tired of this whole street thing, and he wanted to get away with Wanda and kind of expand his mind, and he's now in the mindset of wanting to build with his people instead of destroying. But in the trailer, I believe there's a line where he's talking to someone and he's saying something about if you kill Franklin, I can't quite remember what the rest of the line was, but it was something like it's going to start something with the family or whatever. So what do you think we can expect from Leon being back in episode 3?
Okay, that's a good question. Well, I think first and foremost, and we know that they are very creative with how they cut these trailers together. So obviously, what you see
Yeah.
it could be a completely different context. Um, what I think, though, as far as what they need to explain is why is Leon back? Because obviously He's supposed to be with Wanda. Their whole plan was to go to Africa. So I want an explanation as to why he came back. What is the reason for that? Then we also see that Franklin is obviously paranoid because you see in the trailer he answers the door with his gun, and then he sees this Leon, and he does tell Leon in this trailer, "You need to get out of here as soon as possible and don't come back." So, and again, I believe the episode is the title of the next episode is something like uh the door of no return or something like that. So that kind of lets me know that Franklin, I don't think Leon is going to get back. He's going to be stuck there. But I want to know the explanation as to why he is back. Um, and it has to be a good reason. Obviously, there got to be a good reason for it. But he absolutely is coming back at the worst time because again, this whole war situation that is just about to get started, there's going to be a lot of bodies dropping. So and I think it's very possible that something happens to Wanda also if she is back with him. I don't know how that's going to go down, but it doesn't. It will not be a positive outcome for any of those characters. I would say. We have to see.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. He picked a bad time to come back, to the streets, and I know Leon was one of the characters we were predicting that could, get taken out in the last season. I definitely feel like it's a high probability in this season. Also, just the fact that he did come back, like, and they've made such a big deal out of him coming back. So, either him or Wanda, I do feel like they're going to be casualties of war, um, possibly in this season. And I am interested to see what effect him coming back is going to have on Franklin. Like, if he's going to be able to maybe persuade him, or influence him in some way of his actions, that he's doing wrong, or he could end up being like a not a mentor, but like somebody who kind of gives him like spiritual or mental counseling in some way, indirectly, and kind of makes him see another way, almost. So that would be interesting if they go in that direction. But yeah, him coming back is definitely going to be a risk. But another thing in that trailer, so there was one shot where it looked like, because of course there's a lot of scenes of people with guns and squads, like, with weapons and shooting and things like that. But there was one scene, like, and of course, like, like you said, Rich, they put a lot of attention to detail in editing these trailers, like, to try and trick us and throw us off of certain things. But there was one particular frame where it looked like the inside of a hospital or something. So I'm wondering if somebody potentially goes after Kane, or something like that, or if something happens at the hospital. Just because there's like just one little still frame where it looks like the inside of a hospital, but the rest of it looks separate, like, with the squad. So I don't know, but we see a lot of guns and action, but we also see Teddy. I think he's telling Gustavo, over the phone, that, or it could be in person. It's just the way it's edited. He's telling them they're going to Costa Rica. So what is that about? Did I miss something? Why do you think they're going to Costa Rica?
I believe you said that Teddy made that comment to say that he's going to Costa Rica.
Yeah, did
Um,
did did he say that to Gustavo?
yeah, yeah. Well, here's the thing. They did make a mention that there is a gun shipment that they're waiting that's supposed to arrive. So I don't
Okay.
know if it has something to do with any of that stuff. Um,
Oh yeah, because they
I
need
mean,
a new gun connect, right?
yeah, yeah, and yeah, but there was a one final shipment that Avi ordered that was supposed to be getting shipped, and they were waiting
Okay.
for that stuff to arrive because I remember that Ruben was received that information from the other guy that he's working with. So that's a good question. I'm not really sure. What I will say is that I just think that Gustavo's going to be under once again a lot of pressure because he's paranoid that Teddy knows what he's been doing, even though the guy Tom, Tony Morano said Teddy doesn't know anything. I think Gustavo will forever be paranoid that he does know because we know how obsessive the Teddy character is and that he is very meticulous. If he feels that he is needs to be suspicious about something, he's going to do all that he can to find out what's actually happening. And you also saw in the first episode how when um when Gustavo decided to go and meet up with Tony, and Tony was like, "Hey, you can't do this. You can't do this. This is not part of the plan." I kind of feel like he needs to be very careful because somebody at some point is going to see him with these people, and then it's a problem. So he needs to be very careful with how he's moving, how he's talking to these people, and giving them intel. But I just think in that trailer they're trying to emphasize that Gustavo was still paranoid with Teddy, and he's going to be like that for the foreseeable future because he doesn't know what Teddy knows as far as what he's actually been doing behind Teddy's back. So only a matter of time, I think, before Teddy finds out. And again, I want to see what happens when Teddy finds out what's actually happening with Gustavo.
Yeah, me too. And but it also makes me wonder as well, just the way the trailers put together, like, and because of course there's that shot of Teddy with the sniper rifle, like, he's moving the scope and watching and stuff. And I'm just wondering also if maybe Ruben is gonna make a move or something as well, in this episode. Um
Yeah, they did tell Ruben that he needs to start looking into Gustavo. So maybe they
right.
do have an interaction in the next episode because they did say that at the end of the episode you need to start looking into this other guy, Gustavo. So I kind of feel like that interaction is going to happen. If it's not this upcoming episode, maybe shortly thereafter. But yeah, he's going to definitely get close to him. And I don't really know how Gustavo is going to react when that happens. If he's going to try to attack this guy, or I don't know how that interaction is going to go down. So we need to wait and see what happens with that.
Yeah, that could very much be the case. He could be checking out Gustavo, and then maybe he ends up seeing Teddy there too. Maybe he follows Gustavo and then finds Teddy as well, and decides to do something impulsive, in that moment. But and then also I think there might be a moment in the trailer where Gustavo is talking to Franklin, possibly because I think he's on the phone and he's saying, "Hey man, we need to talk," or something like that. And he could be talking to Franklin at that point. But yeah, these trailers are very well put together. Like, they're designed to throw you off, but also get you intrigued at the same time. So who knows what's going to happen? But was there anything else in the trailer that kind of stood out to you in particular that you wanted to briefly
It
touch on?
it just looked like there's going to be some shootouts. I know we saw some people shooting weapons. Possibly somebody got shot because of how they showed the angle, like somebody was laid out or whatever. I just kind of feel like again because they had this the sit down in this particular episode. There's going to be some hell that happens in the next episode. Now I don't know how extensive it's going to be because again they have a whole bunch of episodes they can really dive deeper into all the stuff that's happening as far as the violence between whoever the people are that's fighting with Franklin. If we do know that Louis and Jerome are going to have to enlist some help to go after Kane and Franklin. So maybe we get a glimpse of that in the next episode. And when you made the comment earlier about it looks as though Kane is in the hospital, I can definitely see them deciding, okay, we need to take Kane out before he has a chance to do anything with Franklin because he is still in the hospital right now. So I can 100% see that happening. But we need to see because right now it feels as though Louis and Jerome had the work cut out for them as far as finding people that they can get on their side. Now, obviously, can Buckley and his crooked cops, yes, they can absolutely, definitely be the ones to do this job. But I kind of feel like it all depends. I don't know how they're going to really handle that. But I definitely see them going after Kane again, whether he is with Franklin or not. So let's see what happens with that entire situation.
Yeah. Yeah, and one thing that just came to mind also is because Dallas, is that her name? Dallas, the
Yep.
the other
Yeah.
girl, right? Yeah. So because Dallas and Black Diamond are no longer able to help Franklin, he's in desperate need of some help in the streets now. Because he doesn't really have anyone, you know, around him now to kind of roll with him and help him, move whatever drugs he has and stuff like that. So or even just to protect him. So that could be a
Mhm.
reason why he actually needs Kane, and maybe he'll try and get Buckley for leverage, just so that he's able to utilize Kane's people or something. So you know
Oh yeah.
that could be that could be something that happens there. But yeah, was there anything else that you kind of wanted to touch on in episode 2 before we
Actually,
didn't
yeah.
touch on?
Well, there is one little quick thing I do want to mention. And I thought again they're very subtle with these things, right? But I kind of feel like that's a bit of a important thing to to be mindful of. Now, you made the comments um, about in the first episode we had that spirited speech by Sissy. In episode 2, they showed Sissy going back to the Edgewood shelter that Elton had, he would where he was working at the homeless shelter. And you saw her basically go back there to, I guess, try to start, to start it up again. Because again, she did play a role in being a part of what's happening with Franklin as far as selling the drugs. And, she is playing a role in that as well as far as helping him. So I kind of feel like she does feel some guilt, and she does want to try and repair the community that Franklin has torn apart. But the reason I bring that up is because you made a very good point earlier in this podcast where you said she really is the glue that keeps the family together. The fact that Jerome was willing to sit down with her and talk with her, and the fact that Franklin, she's basically telling him yes to work with Ruben. She basically is trying to get them to squash what's happening. So I kind of feel like the only way for this to really take a tragic turn would be for something to happen to her. Then when that happens, this whole thing about Jerome and obviously Franklin, the gloves are really off at that point because there's no one there that can reason with either one of them. So I kind of feel like it's headed in that direction. That would be very sad and tragic to see that happen. But we do know that, like you said, there will be some casualties of war. And I don't know who the casualties are. One thing I do know is that we did see in that season trailer that Louis and Franklin were at a funeral, right? And then they showed a shot of Louis frantically crying inside the car. So I do believe Jerome is going to get killed at some point in time. We know that's coming, right? We know that's coming because of the fact that he is still staying in Louis' corner, behind all of this, and it's going to lead to his downfall. But the question is, something could happen before that, and that could be that Sissy is taken out because you do see that in that same season trailer. Even there are scenes where Jerome is breaking down, like, "Oh, I can't do this. This is too much. I can't keep doing this." So some stuff is going to happen, and I kind of feel like for things to really go in a really bad direction, it might mean something happens to Sissy. So I just want to brace people for what could happen, because I know when Jerome does eventually get killed, a lot of people are going to be very angry that that happens. But some of that stuff has to happen because again, it's not going to be a happy ending for these characters. So I just want people to brace themselves. But I'm just saying, pay close attention to Sissy because again, she is important to the family. So if something happens to her, then it's then at that point, I think Franklin would kill Jerome and vice versa because there's no one there to really hold them back from doing any of that stuff. So we'll see what happens.
Oh yeah, that would be very heartbreaking, if Sissy ended up being a casualty of war. And
Mhm.
the Jerome thing with Jerome possibly getting taken out, that's another thing that kind of shows that cause and effect because in season 5, he was breaking down a little bit and he was almost ready to get out the game completely,
Mhm.
last season. And of course, now in this season, he's doubling down on his support of Louis. And he's right back into his gangster bag, beating up women and all this stuff. So I think whenever that happens, where like you kind of make the conscious decision that you want to get out of the game, but then you go back to it, I think that's never a good thing, and that usually always leads to death or incarceration or whatever. So I think they have to show that, and I could totally see him getting taken out later this season. If that's the case, and maybe that funeral was for him. And another person who is in danger of suffering a similar fate is of course Leon, with him coming back, and he might not actually end up getting back into the streets, but just him being around and coming back, is dangerous, and he could also end up being a casualty of war. So it's like whenever you get away, you know, you just never go back. You never go back through that door. Otherwise, in these shows we see time and time again that once you get away and you go back, just like Omar in The Wire, is that's usually the end right there.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
so
Right about that.
yeah. But yeah, this is going to be a very touching season. I think it's going to be very emotional. We're going to see some real touchy things, I think, um, throughout the course of this season, and that trailer just shows it. So yeah, I'm excited, man. I can't wait. I'm glad Snowfall's back on TV. It's sad that it's the final season, but I think we're in for something great. Like we're in for some of the best TV that we're gonna see in a long time. So shouts to FX, shouts to the writers and all of the talent on the show, Damson Idris, and John Singleton, and everybody who kind of made this show. They're doing a great job. But go ahead, Rich. You were gonna say something.
Oh no, I was just going to say, yeah, I also agree. Fantastic start to the season. Definitely is sad that the show is ending, but they're definitely going to go out on a high note. And I'm pretty sure that I can't wait to see all the projects that all of these actors and actresses are going to be working on next, because they did a fantastic job with this show. So only more success will come from all of this. And as I said earlier, again, I believe John Singleton definitely will be proud of all the effort that they put into this. So yeah, I look forward to seeing the next remaining 8 episodes, because now it is only 8 episodes left when you think about it. So
Yeah. Yeah, I do like that they give us 2 episodes to start with. Like more shows need to adopt that model because that's pretty cool.
I
Even
agree.
though it's more work for us, but also it's great being able to watch two. So yeah, but yeah, like we'll be back next week to recap episode 3 of Snowfall season 6. And yeah, like Rich said, I can't wait to see what some of these actors do next. Like especially Damson, because I feel like he's gonna have some major roles ahead of him. So yeah, it's gonna be exciting to see that. But we will be back next week. So take care of yourselves, good people. Make sure you leave your comments. Let us know what you think. Let us know what your thoughts and theories. Subscribe to the channel and like the video. And definitely have a great week. And stay healthy, everyone. Peace out.
Peace out.